Welcome to the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show on May 9th, 2024. This is our 196th episode, and my name is Andy Z. I'm a host of the show. Today's RNL show comes in the midst of an extraordinary, unique moment in a pivotal year in which there is the possibility that there will be an opening for an actual revolution in this country. On the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show, we bring you why we need a revolution, why only a real revolution to overthrow the system we live under, the system of capitalism, imperialism, to overcome all the forms of exploitation and oppression, all the madness and brutality here and around the world. The RNL show brings you the voice and the leadership of the revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian, B.A. Through Bob Avakian's leadership and the work he has done, there is a new framework for human emancipation, and there is a strategy for how to actually make a revolution and win it. And there is a blueprint for a new society brought into being through that real revolution in the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America that Bob Avakian has authored. The RNL show brings you Bob Avakian because this leadership is what people here and around the world need to get free. We come to you on May 9th, 2024, in an extraordinary moment when the genocide of the Palestinian people by Israel, fully backed and supported by the U.S., is poised to take yet another, almost imaginably horrific turn, with the bombing beginning now in the border city of Rafah, where 1 million Palestinians were forced to flee to. We will be hearing from our reporter, Goodman, on this developing situation. This is also an extraordinary moment, a moment when students in colleges and universities across the U.S. have stood up against the genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza. As we record this week's program, almost 2,500 students in this country have been arrested for standing up and demanding that their schools and government stop supporting this genocide. Students and faculty have faced fascist thugs, paramilitary police, rubber bullets, pepper and bear spray, beatings with clubs, zip-tied, cuffs so tight they suffered nerve damage. They've been thrown in city jails and held on buses and in many cases denied food, water, and toilets for many hours. Yet, all this repression has inspired tens of thousands, if not more, to rally to their support. Their actions and the vicious repression they have faced from fascists in the universities and the police have posed big questions of why is the U.S. doing what it is doing in Gaza? Why are these students meeting such vicious repression? And we Revcoms have gone into the midst of this to pose how and why this struggle must broaden and deepen. And we struggle with students, and we've struggled to open a door for students to get into the movement for an actual revolution in this time when revolution could be possible. On today's show, Sansara Taylor, a host of the RNL show, will be interviewing Veale and Amina from the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity, who were this past week unjustly arrested at UCLA. This important interview will be later in today's program. But we begin today's program with Revolutionary Internationalist May Day in Los Angeles that happened on May 5th. The Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity also held May Day marches and rallies in Harlem, New York.
America was never great.
America was never great.
In Texas, in the Bay Area in California, and in Chicago, where they marched to an encampment in support of Palestine at the Art Institute of Chicago, where 2 of the Revcoms were arrested. In Los Angeles, there was a rally, march, and picnic in a park in the neighborhood of South Central LA, and we're going to show you a few things that bring out the revolutionary character of this day. And then we're going to follow this with Bob Avakian on what is a real revolution.
I want to salute everyone who has come out today to say we need and we demand a whole new way to live and a fundamentally different system. Everyone who came out to say, stop the U.S.-Israeli genocide against Palestinians now. Everyone who came out to say, stop capitalism, imperialism from stealing our future. A salute to everyone who came out to work for revolution and those who came out to learn more about it. A salute To our comrades in Iran, Mexico, and Colombia who have been celebrating May Day, working for the same revolution in other parts of the world that we are working for here. And a salute to the students who bravely stepped out and shook the conscience of this country and the people living in it. As we're gathered here today, Israel has been announcing its plans or its intent to carry out a further invasion of Gaza in Rafah, which is where most people have become concentrated because of the months and months of slaughter, of children being bombed to ashes, of hospitals being destroyed, of whole neighborhoods being crumbled by Israeli bombs, tanks, gunfire, all backed up and made in the USA. The Palestinian people are not just some people over there who are having this happen to. Those are our people. That is our blood being spilled. Those are our homes being destroyed. Our people are the whole people of the world who are being oppressed and who are suffering miserably under this system. And we have to fight like our future depends on it, because it does. And the students in the last week who have stood up across this country have finally exposed the sickening lie that this country is spreading somehow freedom and democracy all over the world. Think about it. Students on elite universities and campuses who are told and who are pursuing their futures in the whole framework of living in a country of liberty and justice for all, where you have the freedom to pursue your dreams and your education and your future and do whatever you want to do in the world. They stepped out and they said, we're no longer going to look on as our country supports, backs, and arms a brutal, sickening, inhumane genocide being carried out in our names. These students, if you think about it, yesterday was the 54th anniversary of Kent State, when the National Guards were sent out to shoot students who were protesting what was then a genocidal war being carried out directly by the U.S. And that generation came to be defined by people pouring into the streets to stop the Vietnam War and to oppose America's treatment of black people as it had been treating black people for its entire existence. And what these students have done here now could be part of what defines this generation of people coming out to oppose their country and saying we are not going to accept another genocidal war being carried out in our names. And more than that, we need to push on it to make this generation actually be about that, for real. Fighting it not to stop this genocide and to put an end to the system that is doing that there and is carrying out atrocities all over the world, including right here. But one more thing that we have going for us is the fact that we have not just a clear sense of what we're up against, but what we're for. Think about not just the genocide, but also think about the way students stood up here in UCLA. Just a week ago, they were descended on by Zionist fascist thugs who were carrying out brutal beatings of the encampment while the police stood aside and let this all go down. And then, in the day following that, the police proceeded to carry out their own brutality and beatings to drive out the students from their encampments. Think about what this system does. Despite all its talk about freedom, democracy, and rights, and compare that and think about what the new socialist republic in North America would do when we dismantle this system and replace it with revolutionary institutions and a revolutionary society. In this broadsheet, we demand a whole new way to live in a fundamentally different system. It outlines 6 key points of how the new society would be different. And point number 1 is a whole new dimension of freedom and rights of the people. It says the government institutions established with this new socialist constitution, including the police and military, will no longer be to contain, control, repress, brutalize, murder, and slaughter people here and all over the world. Instead, these radically new institutions will safeguard the rights of the people and give backing to the masses of people in moving to abolish all forms of discrimination and inequality, all relations of oppression and exploitation. They will defend the new, emancipating society against attempts to sabotage, attack, and destroy it, and will support people throughout the world fighting for the goal of emancipation. As set forth in this Constitution for a new socialist republic in North America, the people in this new society will not only be allowed, but encouraged and enabled to fully speak their minds politically, to express themselves freely through artistic and other means, to dissent and protest with constitutional and institutionalized protection of their right to do so. They will be provided with the means for doing this, because this is an important part of creating an atmosphere where people can breathe and feel at ease, and where they will be inspired to join with others in grappling with what will and what will not contribute to the emancipating transformation of society and the world as a whole. I do just want to reread and underline some things to think about. I'm not going to get into it all right now, but think about this. Not only allowed, but encouraged and enabled. And they will be provided with means for doing this. Think about this system pretends that people has the right, but even in its best, even at its highest, when things are stable and they are not so concerned about repressing people, all they can do is not violate their rights, not stop them from saying this or that. Meanwhile, the actual mouthpieces that are able to influence everybody's thinking and determine decision-making of this system are the ones who big media corporations, big financial institutions, big think tanks that determine the direction of things. This is talking about a new society where people have taken control of society away from the capitalists who run it now, put the resources of society to work for social priorities, one of which will be to enable people, not just allow people, and to provide people with the means for doing this. Again, just think about that. And I'm going to read the titles of the other ones. I'm not going to get into it all, but think about all of that in relation to all of these 6 key outlines of how the new society will be different. A whole different economy to meet the fundamental needs and serve the highest interests. Eliminating discrimination, inequality, and oppression in every form. Education to actually educate and empower the masses of people. Healthcare to serve the people. And abolishing nuclear weapons, finally abolishing wars, and systematically addressing the environmental crisis. Again, this is an outline and a concentration of 6 key ways this new socialist republic, which is outlined in the Constitution authored by Bob Avakian, would be different from the society that we live in now. And this is not just a pipe dream. This is a blueprint for how, when we cast off the chains of this system and the straitjacket that it has on humanity's potential, when we finally make a revolution and dismantle the institutions of this society and get rid of that American Constitution and replace it, this is the society we could actually live in. And the revolution to do that can be made in the time we are living in now. And this is what we're doing here today to work towards. This is the opportunity that's opening up in a much bigger way in the time we live in now. This is our chance and our responsibility to the people of the world who so desperately need us to be who we need to be, to do what needs to be done right here in the belly of the beast.
So the first thing I want to say is, if you haven't, you need to join the Revcom Corps for the emancipation of humanity. You need to live for and fight for the points of attention of the revolution, especially in this rare time that you've been hearing about. But for this to happen, for it to really happen, and happen in the way that it needs to happen, because a lot of people need to do just what I said. The people that's out here that live in this community need to, can, and must become part of this revolutionary force. But for this to happen, people got to get out of a lot of the bullshit that they're caught up in. That this system, the way the system got people thinking and acting and get into the revolution. People in this community and communities like this everywhere got to get out of the bullshit and of fighting and killing each other and using other people, slanging a little bit of this, a little bit of that, climbing over, stepping over like each other, and just trying to survive under this dog-eat-dog system. All that goes against the interests of the masses of people. It helps to weaken, not strengthen, the revolution. People need to act to strengthen the revolution by becoming part of the force that is organizing people for this revolution. Because we got to make everyone stop and take notice that there's a force out here, there's a revolutionary alternative force out here that represents a whole new way, a whole different way that we can be, that society can be, a whole different system. A system that gets concentrated again, or gets concentratedly expressed. And number two of the points of attention, we fight for a world where all the chains are broken. Women and men and differently gendered people are equals and comrades. We do not tolerate physically or verbally abusing women or treating them as sexual objects, nor do we tolerate insults and jokes about people's gender or sexual orientation. Let everybody take notice about what the revolution, about this, and decide how they're going to relate to this. And when we go out here in a march today, people have to see that there is a different authority, a new authority, a revolutionary authority that's concentrated here. And the people that they see here, coming out here, prepared to struggle with them, or what they need to do with their life, and how they need to become part of the revolution to emancipate humanity and get out of the bullshit that this system keeps people trapped in and caught up in. Because as Bob Avakian says, we just saw, there's something deep down in people that they want better. Well, we represent the better that they want, and it's up to us to take that to them and reach down in there and pull that out. Revolución.
¿Cuál es el problema?
El sistema, el sistema.
¿Cuál es la solución?
Revolución, revolución.
De Gaza a México.
De Gaza a México.
Tumbemos esos muros.
Tumbemos esos muros.
My sign says stop killing innocent people.
Revolution.
In Gaza. Shame on you.
Mine says Gaza under attack.
Yeah, look, I just wanted to say, I was just talking to someone over lunch, and we were talking seriously about what's going to be involved in actually making a revolution when you think about the violence that was used against the students over the last week. It was just a small taste of what they have to be able to wield against the people of the world. And think about when you're hearing these points of attention, how different this is from this world, how different it is to live this way, but also what it means to have a force that's going to fight this way for these principles. What kind of force is going to go up against this empire that fights the way it does by bombing, slaughtering, torturing, raping, conditioning their own soldiers to be mindless killing machines, pumped up with pornography to carry out slaughter against people that they are trained to see as nothing, And think about the kind of force that needs to be trained right here to lead millions to do what needs to be done when the time is right, to wage an all-out fight to bring this system down without becoming what we're fighting. A force that's actually for the emancipation of humanity and not for settling a score, getting our piece of all this, or getting back at those who have gotten at us. Think about that when you're hearing and seeing those of us who are here going to be reciting these points of attention, and what it means to organize for revolution, what it means to join the Revcom Corps for the emancipation of humanity, where you can learn more about this while you take part in working for revolution, where you learn to work with people who are just like you and nothing like you for the common cause of emancipating humanity, where you learned to become a leader yourself by learning the science of revolution and communism, and where you can have an impact that you can't have alone. An impact that you can't have just by being an individual by yourself trying to do good, but by being part of an organized, growing, disciplined, revolutionary force that is working to organize the thousands to lead millions to make a revolution in the time we live in now. So these are the points of attention for the revolution. We live by and fight for these points of attention. This is the code of the revolution. Repeat after me. Point of attention number 1.
Point of attention number 1.
We base ourselves on
We base ourselves on
and strive to represent
and strive to represent
the highest interests of humanity,
the highest interests of humanity,
revolution and communism.
revolution and communism.
We do not tolerate
We do not tolerate
using the revolution
using the revolution
for personal gain.
for personal gain.
Point of attention number 6.
Point of attention number 6.
We are going for an actual overthrow of this system
We are going for an actual overthrow of this system
and a whole better way beyond
and a whole better way beyond
the destructive,
the destructive,
vicious
vicious
conflicts of today
conflicts of today
between the people.
between the people.
Because we are serious
Because we are serious
at this stage,
at this stage,
we do not initiate violence
we do not initiate violence,
and we oppose all violence
and we oppose all violence
against the people
against the people
and among the people.
and among the people.
All right, that was Revolutionary Internationalist May Day in Los Angeles. We ended up with the points of attention, the code for the revolution. The comrades read in a call and response 2 of the 6 points. Read all 6 of them on our website, revcom.us. Now, we want to follow this up since we were talking about revolution and people are agitating and preparing for revolution. Well, what is a real revolution? So I want to play now a question and answer from Bob Avakian in the interview that he did on this show with Sansara Taylor and myself in the fall of 2022 on what is a real revolution. And I'm going to follow that with Michelle Chai at this May Day rally, which she hosted. Michelle is the leader of the Los Angeles chapter of the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity. And at one point, she started agitating about what BA means for her and the kind of opposition we sometimes run into out on the campuses and how she feels about that and what stand we have to take to it. So let's go to Bob Avakian, followed by Michelle Chai at Revolutionary Internationalist May Day in Los Angeles.
So you've dedicated your whole life, over decades, to making revolution and emancipating humanity. And I want to talk about revolution. It's a word that people throw around all the time. And people mean radically, very wildly different things when they use it. What is a real revolution, and why is that necessary?
Well, it's not a new variation of Charmin toilet paper. Okay, that's the first thing we can say. You know, it's not a change just in the culture, to be more serious. It means that you actually overthrow the existing system and replace it with a different system. That's what an actual revolution is. And yes, you know, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of people, I remember, you know, after I think it was Parkland shooting, you know, there was big rallies that were held, and one of the students from there, you know, got up to speak at one of these big rallies, and the first thing he said was, welcome to the revolution, because there were, large numbers, masses of people there. Well, masses of people are one important ingredient of a revolution. You don't make a revolution with a handful of people. You need, millions of people ultimately to make a revolution. But the question is, what are those people fighting for? What are they aiming for? Are they aiming just to make changes within the existing system, or are they actually recognizing that you cannot bring about the positive resolution of all these different horrors that exist in this country, and we could go through them, but in the world as a whole? You cannot bring about a positive resolution to that, an elimination of all that, within the confines of this system. That is another scientifically determined, evidence-based truth. And so therefore, a revolution means that you overthrow this system in order to, bring into being a completely different foundation in how the economy functions, different relations among people that are not oppressive, a different culture that, instead of reinforcing all this garbage and oppression, actually reinforces emancipating relations among people and emancipating ideas among people, and all the political structures also are transformed in order to serve the further transformation of society, to uproot all the underlying basis for all this exploitation and oppression. That's a revolution. Nothing short of that is an actual revolution.
That he says in these interviews about having respect for people. A lot of people say, well, that's your opinion. Let's just have a respectable conversation and let's just end it here before we start disagreeing. But the most respect you can have for people is struggling for what's true. Struggling with people. If they are saying some bullshit, they need to be told that they're saying some bullshit. Okay? And that is, with this leader, you watch the whole of that interview, he doesn't hold back. You read the works that he's actually, putting forward, the social media messages. He's not holding back. He's pointing to what are the wrong terms right now. Where people, just even that I want to call on people to go on these social media at Bob Avakian Official and listen to, as Noche was saying, listen to the whole of those social media messages. But this leader doesn't hold back, okay? At this time, when these encampments are being labeled as anti-Semitic, he actually goes at what the actual terms of what is being done in these protests and who the actual violent ones are. It is not these students. It is not the people that are protesting. It is this system that is dropping 2,000-pound bombs on our brothers and sisters in Palestine, and the people that are rising up and saying no are righteous and they need to be defended, and that kind of struggle needs to spread. And that's the concrete leadership that Bob Avakian is giving right now. And that's what people need to know about. That's what needs to spread. And that's what we, who are followers of this leader, proudly go out there and struggle with people about. And this is something that really pisses me off, that I just have to speak to, that, people label us as some brainless cult, followers because how dare they go out there and just talk about one leader. Somebody told me as we were out at UCLA that how dare I wear a shirt that says BA speaks. And I just had to say, I'm sorry, because I'm like some brainless idiot that has no critical thinking of herself, and she just puts on whatever the fuck shirt and just, does whatever. No, we put on this shirt very consciously. I promote the leadership of Bob Avakian very consciously. And if people have a disagreement with the content of what BA is putting forward, then bring that on the table. We're not scared of people disagreeing with the content. People need to be more talking about and struggling over what's true and how we're going to put an end to this system instead of name calling and snarking and sniping and, and telling us to get out of the campus because we're daring to get out there and bringing this leader. We were in the right place and we were talking about the damn right thing when we were out there at UCLA, bringing this leadership to people that need to actually understand where this is coming from and how to end it and strengthen that movement. To get to the root of why this is happening and why it is that the heavy hand of this, system that so calls itself democratic and all this, until you rise up and you dare to question, what they're doing, then the heavy hand of the dictatorship comes in. That's what he gets into in these social media messages. That's what we're bringing to people. That's what we're struggling with people about getting into. And that's what people need to know. And that's what we are struggling with people about. And we're not sorry about that, and we're not going to apologize about that, because we respect people enough and know that they have the ability to understand that, to themselves dig into it, and to themselves break out of the bullshit that this system trains people in thinking and taking up and living by, right? So this is who we are, and this is what we're representing, and we're fighting for the leadership of Bob Avakian. And this.
We're going to welcome Alan Goodman back to the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. Alan regularly reports on the RNL show and at Revcom.us on the Mideast. And for the last 6 months, Alan has been covering the Israeli genocidal war backed by the U.S. on the people of Gaza. Alan, how you doing?
I'm angry. I'm here.
Good, good. Alan, we want to hear from you on the status of the beginning invasion of Rafah in Gaza as we film tonight, Wednesday evening. But first, for our viewers, I think it'd be very important if you could just briefly set the stage on where is Rafah and what's the situation in Rafah over the last few months.
So Rafah is I'm going to do my hand map like I did last week. Rafah is at the very southern tip of Gaza. Gaza itself, also called the Gaza Strip, because it's only 7 miles wide, 25 miles high, before Israel's retaliatory genocidal slaughter coming off October 7th, was one of the most packed places on earth. Now, half the population of Gaza has been driven by Israeli bombs, missiles, bulldozers, starvation, disease has been driven. This is half the population, over 1 million people, into the town of Rafah on the very southern tip of Gaza. And Rafah has a border crossing with Egypt and also into Israel to the east, Egypt to the south, Israel to the east. Packed into a town that had 250,000 people, where had they been living until today or until a few days ago, they had been living in tents, in desperate homemade tent cities, almost 1 million people, shoulder to shoulder in tents, without access to enough food or water to sustain them, completely dependent, and keep track of this, completely dependent on daily aid trucks coming in through 2 different crossings, one from Egypt at the Rafah crossing, one from Israel at the Kerem Shalom crossing.
Alan, the news is filled with maneuvering over a possible ceasefire. Biden came out on Wednesday and said that he is pausing shipment of the biggest U.S. bombs to Israel. Yet at the same time, he said he would do this if Israel launches a full-scale invasion of Rafah. But the reality on the ground in Rafah is that Israel bombed the city earlier this week, unleashing horror on top of horror that the Palestinian people packed into Rafah are suffering from. So, Alan, what do we actually know about what has happened thus far in the military phase of what could be the opening of the Israeli assault on Rafah?
Well, first, I just think we need to say, without going into trying to make any analysis or speculation, that when word hit Rafah, these people in the most desperate situations, driven from their homes to another place, driven out of that other place, leaving everything, including their dead family members, behind, 10,000 of them buried in rubble. When news spread that Hamas had signed on to a ceasefire, people were dancing in the streets. The little bit of relief they would have gotten, and then that got yanked out from under them. So that's just sadistic. That's depraved. And then instead, what people have gotten is an exponential intensification of the nightmare. The city has been thrown into panic. Bombs are dropping, and I think you may be in a position to share with viewers a map of this. Bombs are dropping all over Rafah. Explosions. There's dust in the air. People are desperately trying to save victims. People are panicky. And then I mentioned that the people driven into Rafah are day to day, hour to hour dependent on the trickle of aid. This is the only way they get water and food overwhelmingly. And Israel shut that down over the last couple of days. Israel sent tanks to the Rafah crossing with Egypt, and they, on their own, shut down the Kerem Shalom crossing. This means the trickle of food, water, and medical aid is not getting in. Then Israel threatened 110,000 people that the area they were living in was going to be hit with extreme force, and they needed to evacuate within hours. These are starving people. These are people who do not have modes of transportation. These are ill people. These are infirm people. These are children and elderly people. And they are being told to go to a place, 110,000 people, to go to a place that Western news agencies are reporting has no space and no water. That's a death march. That's a death march to a death camp. And it's going on right now. And the bombing, the massive bombing that's going on in Rafah, is creating a climate of terror. People know that they won't be getting the daily rations of water and food coming in. So the panic that's been set off is so widespread that even people who are not in the zone that Israel told them they had to flee out of are also fleeing. So this is hell on earth. This is the red line has been crossed. Humanity cannot stand still for this. That's the short story.
Alan, that's just like incredible. And this situation, to be very clear to our audience, that the munitions that are being dropped, the bombs that are falling on the people of Gaza, are bombs that are being provided by the United States. Intelligence is provided by the United States. This is on us as well as on the state of Israel. And this requires a ferocious response from the people in this country that has to build on what the students have been doing. And really, the students themselves, which is a big subject of our show today, we're going to get into that, have been sort of manning the barricades of conscience on this. But what I'd like you to bring out some more, Alan, is what is the overall situation in the rest of Gaza as this invasion of Rafah is going on?
Well, that's a good question. Given what I just sketched out, many people are making a call that rather than go to the so-called humanitarian zone, they will try to return to central and north Gaza, meaning Khan Yunis, the largest city in the center, and then further north to Gaza City, which, without getting into it, was, even under a brutal Israeli siege, a city of 1 million people, hospitals, universities, mosques, community centers, 1 million human beings basically reduced to rubble. And Khan Yunis, pretty much the same thing. And yet, under the desperate conditions, many people are taking their chances to go back to these places. And they are places where Israel has relatively even more freedom to carry out massacres. People who follow the coverage at Revcoms may remember that an Israeli supervised food distribution, supposedly in Gaza City about a month ago, ended up with Israel shooting down and killing over 100 people lining up for food. So without the intervention of humanitarian groups, without any kind of media spotlight, Israel has even more freedom in these northern cities and has left them in rubble. And yet this is where people are fleeing to. So that's the short story. It's a horror, it's a heartbreak, and that's the situation.
Finally, Alan, what is the situation in the West Bank as this is going down in Gaza?
Yeah, last week when I was on the show, I used the example of a very typical situation where, first of all, a pogrom of rabid, racist, violent so-called settlers really a lynch mob, comparable, if you know American history, to a Ku Klux Klan assault on a black community in the Jim Crow South, descends on a Palestinian town within the West Bank, a section of historic Palestine that's occupied by Israel illegally through war. And this mob of settlers burns houses, terrorizes people, kills people. Then the Israeli army comes in. And what do? In the particular example I gave last week, the first two things they went after were the town bakery and the town sewage system. Well, if you're going after Hamas or Islamic fundamentalist terrorists operating in small cells, engaging in small scale shootouts with Israel on a low level, that's not what you do. If you are trying to drive the Palestinian people living in the West Bank, that is the area to the west of the Jordan River, in historic Palestine, to crush them, to drive them out. In our coverage at Revcom, we quoted a woman who was told that her house has been destroyed. She has to leave her town, and said there is no place safe in the West Bank for Palestinians. So these are the kinds of conditions that people are facing. The escalated genocidal ethnic cleansing going on in the West Bank is going hand in hand with what's going on in Gaza.
All right, Alan. This is a situation of just unprecedented terror, horror, man-made famine. It is a genocide, and it is a genocide that is in the interest of U.S. imperialism, and they have been continuing this. And whatever maneuvers you hear, even within the ruling class here, their differences are over how rapidly to crush the Palestinian people. And this is something that people need to stand up against in even greater numbers than they have thus far. So thank you, Alan, for being on the show again and for the coverage on Revcom.us. And we'll probably see you, if not next week, the week after, but we're going to keep having you on the show to update our audience.
Okay, thanks.
What's being done to the Palestinians of Gaza compounds week after week. It is this that has driven students of all nationalities, religions, and backgrounds, first at elite universities and now spreading all over. Sansara Terla went out to UCLA on Wednesday, May 8th to talk with the Revcoms, Raphael and Amina, who were arrested at UCLA on Monday.
All right, so we are back out at UCLA campus. There's some noise behind us because right now they are spraying down the Free Gaza graffiti that was scrawled across Royce Hall as part of the beautiful encampment against the genocide that the U.S. is backing and Israel is carrying out against the Palestinian people in Gaza. Just a week ago, there were tents. There were hundreds of people camped out, students occupying this lawn behind us. And it was part of a nationwide movement of occupations, encampments, and protest against the genocide in Gaza among students and others throughout society. I am here today with Raphael Caderas and Amina, who were swept up and arrested on Monday morning with about 45 others here on campus as part of what is now a massive wave of arrests and repression against student protesters and others across this country. More than 2,500 have been arrested. Students have been expelled and suspended. People have been doxxed and blacklisted. Their careers and lives have been threatened. People have been sent to the hospital. They've been brutalized by police and Zionist thugs. And so we are here today to talk some about the significance of all of this. Raphael, Amina, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Sansara.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right, so I want to start out by just asking you, Raphael, how do you understand the significance of this mass wave of arrests and repression? I know that among those who've been arrested, among those who've been attacked, and among those in the broader campus community here at UCLA and actually across the country, a lot of people have been really shocked and trying to make sense of what is going on with this. Why is there such violent repression?
Yeah, it is shocking to a lot of people. And, you'd think, these universities claim to be centers of that value free speech, that value, inquiry, that want their students to be politically engaged. You'd think these universities would be applauding their students for, taking a stand and on the side of justice, about something halfway across the world that doesn't affect them personally, but they're, feel so strongly about it. They're opening up a conversation on campus. You'd think these universities would be applauding these students. No, these universities are sending the police after them. They're sending the CHP, California Highway Patrol. They're sending in riot police. They're letting the Zionists right here on this campus, brutalize students for hours while the police stand on the side. That, for people who don't know, they should watch last week's episode to see how the Zionists, pro-Israeli forces, hundreds of them on this campus, came with bear spray. They came with, metal rods and wooden pallets and tried to destroy the camp. And the students held strong in the face of this. But all across this country, we're seeing, at Dartmouth College, the camp that they set up, the Anti-Genocide, pro-Palestine divestment camp, lasted about 2 hours before the police came in and destroyed it. So what is it that these university administrations, that these police, that the government, Biden is spending pretty much almost every day demonizing these camps. Just the other day, he's out, spreading the big lie that there's some kind of wave of anti-Semitism sweeping these college campuses. This is complete bullshit. It's not anti-Semitism. It's anti-genocide. So why is this happening? It's because, as Bob Avakian has said repeatedly in his social media messages, fundamental interests of this system are at stake, because the state of Israel plays a special role as a heavily armed bastion of support for U.S. imperialist interests in the Middle East, which is a strategic part of the world. It's where a lot of the oil gets produced. It's a crossroads of world trade. And the United States, especially at the elite universities, right in the heart of the empire, they cannot tolerate even any questioning of the fundamental, such a strategic interest of this system, which is what the state of Israel represents. And even more than that, they are scared about a whole generation losing their allegiance to this system as a whole. Losing their allegiance to America, no longer being invested in the crimes that this country perpetrates all over the world, from Korea to Vietnam to Iraq to Afghanistan to right now backing a genocide in Gaza. And they are worried about students turning against this empire. Like happened in the 1960s. We saw how the revolts at Columbia University, at UC Berkeley, at Madison, Wisconsin, how that rippled throughout society and, radicalized the whole generation, and they can't tolerate that.
Amina, I understand that I want to talk more about some of the conversations you had with people in jail while being detained and all of this, but one of the things I understand came up was a question of whether all the media coverage about the encampments and the attacks and the arrests on the encampments, whether this is a distraction taking people's eyes off of Gaza, and how do you understand that? How do you speak to that?
The simple answer is it's not a distraction. It's actually a great inspiration. Millions and millions of people are seeing exactly what he was working through. Students at elite institutions, putting everything on the line, their careers, their jobs, their future, and really to take a stand, to take a basic stand that they are in opposition to this genocide, and really calling and insisting that their universities, that their peers, that others actually take a stand, and really drawing a dividing line by sleeping out, camping out, and really putting a lot of sacrifice, on to the side and saying, no, we're not going to be complicit in the face of a tremendous crime against humanity, and I think that is the lesson that people have to draw from this, that with great inspiration, and take lead from that, and it is the reality that the resistance does need to grow, and I think that's sort of the moral position that they're taking, and I think that everybody actually needs to grab hold of that lesson and stand with them and grow in our millions to actually put a stop to this.
We want to, in that light, play a couple of excerpts that we've found in the media of students speaking about why they took these stands and the courage they're displaying.
Over the last 6 months, more than 124 people in my family have been brutally killed by the Israeli occupation forces. For the last 6 months,
are being in there.
They gave us some ridiculous notice out here saying that like participants in the quad encampment, which no longer exists thanks to them, are facing like an interim leave of absence as well as a criminal trespass charge. I have no idea if that's just a scare tactic or if it's real, but it doesn't matter because the difference between us and people like these cops is that there are limits to when we continue following orders. And when you're talking about a genocide visited upon a colonized population of 2 million people trapped in a ghetto that's as long as a marathon and 6 miles wide, when that ghetto is being systematically starved, slaughtered, every hospital bombed, every university bombed, 70% of homes destroyed, 40,000 people murdered, 15,000 children murdered, the entire population on the brink of starvation, we say, and if our government and our academic institutions are complicit in this, there comes a point where we say we're not following orders and it doesn't matter what you do to us because there are principles and there are human lives that matter more than our careers and our futures, and that's what separates us from people like Paul Olivisatos, the coward president of this university, and these coward cops that come in terrorizing an encampment while people are sleeping.
You know, these are incredibly stirring voices that we just played, very inspiring, and we've seen this echoed by people here on this campus, other campuses in Southern California, across the country, in Texas and Minnesota and Wisconsin and Vermont, all across the country. I want to go back to some of the people, and both of you could speak to this, but some of the students that you were locked up with, zip-tied for hours the other morning, and what were some of the conversations like? How were they processing? Who were they? What had motivated them?
I mean, one thing to clearly understand, these are people students that 2 weeks ago, like, had never done anything like this, you know, had never actually felt like I have to take a political stand against what this government is doing. And it was heavy, you know, it's not like people woke up that morning and go, oh, I'm going to go get arrested. They were like, what is my mom going to think? I can't show my face on camera, you know, like I can't, you know, oh my God, who's my emergency contact? I have no, you know, please don't call my mom. Like that was actually, you know, or people were weighing like, oh my God, you know, I really want to graduate. Is this going to stay on my record? Well, and kind of really at the same time, you know, two conflicting thoughts at the same time going, well, you know what, it doesn't matter, you know, like I am here and I am taking the correct stand against, you know, against a genocide. And that is actually more important than anything that I have to personally go through. You know, it was, or you had like, you had different contingents of students, you know, even a theater group student that were just like, you know, we're singing, we're trying to memorize the legal number through song. We're also going like, you know, okay, what's the perfect, you know, song for this occasion, you know, and so we go, they're like Willie Nelson, no Les Mis, like we just have to, you know, just really trying to keep the enthusiasm up, you know, of like just how correct we are. And people are also saying, you know, wow, this university fears us. They fear us. You know, the only way that they have to respond to this is by arresting us. You know, we are strong, and just everybody kind of having each other's back and saying like, no, you know, we're up against something much bigger than just, you know, our individual, you know, kind of sacrifices. We're up against, you know, kind of we're here together, and we're up against, you know, kind of it's standing in opposition to this genocide, and that actually matters, you know.
Well, I think that's important, and people are going through really big changes really fast. This is not only a turning point period in this society, in history, it's also a turning point for many people in their own lives who are finding themselves inspired by others and outraged by an atrocity and crime against humanity, putting themselves in doing things they never anticipated, acting in ways they never expected they would, finding courage they never thought they'd find. And now we have a whole generation being shaped by this, and 2,500 among them, including the two of you arrested on both coasts now in this upsurge, who have been arrested and who actually are an important moral force. They're facing charges, they're facing heavy stakes, many of them, but there's also something very important we've raised the demand that the charges be dropped against all the protesters, that all of the students get amnesty on their suspensions, expulsions, that we have the backs of everybody who's come under attack for this. And what's the importance of building the political defense for those who've been arrested and for everybody else as part of strengthening the fight to stop this genocide?
Yeah, well, I think it is important that, many of the protest movements throughout the country have also raised the demand for amnesty. There's faculty, who have who have signed petitions demanding charges be dropped and suspensions be dropped on these students. Everywhere people have been arrested, there's been jail support. All this is really important part of the defense, but I think it's also important that we recognize that the defense of these 2,500 people who've been arrested and more every day that are being arrested, this can actually be turned into offense against this genocidal war, offense against this system that would throw protesters trying to stop a genocide in prison. We got to use this as an opportunity to expose the crimes of Israel in the United States before the whole world. We have to use this as an opportunity to expose the fact that, for all their talk of rights, and we should fight for the rights that we do have, and are the rights that have been blatantly violated, we should fight, on the legal grounds, which we do have. Almost everywhere we've gone, the police, almost everywhere people have been arrested, the police have blatantly violated people's legal rights, their right to assemble, their right to free speech, their right to protest, all this. But even more, we got to expose the bankrupt nature of a system that would throw people trying to stop a genocide in jail, that would suspend them, that would expel them. And I just have to say, when we make a revolution and get rid of this system and bring it to being a whole new socialist society based on the Constitution for the new socialist republic written by the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian, if there were people, including, pro-Israel people or pro-America people who rallied on a college campus like this in opposition to the socialist government, we would allow that to happen. We would encourage it. We would use it as an opportunity to open up a debate about what kind of society we want to live in. This should be things like this are actually, in opposition to the idea that these student protesters are disrupting education. This is one of the best educational experiences to actually learn about the world and learn about, what's really going on, why it's happening, where the real interests of humanity are. So let's come to the defense of these people who are under attack in these trials, and in these legal cases. And let's use it as an opportunity to expose this system and to get the real interests of humanity out before the eyes of the world. And let's beat these charges.
So I want to thank you, Raphael and Amina, for being out in the streets with so many others, demanding an end to this genocide, spreading the word about revolution, standing strong in the face of things brought down on both of you, and for coming here on the Revolution Nothing Less show to talk to us today. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, and thank you also for being on the front lines. I know you were here when all this went down at UCLA too.
Yes.
Early in the interview we just watched, Raphael referenced Bob Avakian's social media dispatches, which have, among other things, shined a penetrating light on why the United States won't back off its support for Israel, even as it carries out a horrific genocide before the eyes of the world, and even as huge sections of the people, including, crucially, students at the elite universities, turn against him. We want to play a portion of this social media for you right now. This is from Bob Avakian's message number 7.
Why is Biden and basically the entire government and ruling class of the U.S. supporting Israel in carrying out genocide against the Palestinian people before the whole world? Here is the answer to that crucial question. This is not because of the power of the Jewish lobby, or because of some ignorant, ridiculous, and outrageous notion that Jews are controlling everything. It is because Israel plays a special role as a heavily armed bastion of support for U.S. imperialism in a strategically important part of the world, the Middle East. And Israel has been a key force in the commission of atrocities which have helped to maintain the oppressive rule of U.S. imperialism in many other parts of the world. It's the system of capitalism imperialism that Biden serves. The system he has to serve. The system that anybody and everybody has to serve if they want to hold office, and especially high office like president, within this system. That is why Biden is doing what he's doing, what all these politicians are doing, above and beyond their more narrow personal interests. It's the system, this system of capitalism imperialism, that embodies and enforces white supremacy, patriarchal male supremacy, and other brutal oppression. This system, resting on ruthless, life-stealing exploitation of masses of people in this country and literally billions of people worldwide, including more than 150 million children, all enforced with massive violence and destruction of people and the environment, posing a very real threat to the future and the existence of humanity. This system that needs to be overthrown at the soonest possible time through an actual revolution.
Go and listen to the full message by following @Bob Avakian Official on all social media platforms. Then keep listening. Listen to all of the messages: powerful, real-time, revolutionary scientific analysis and leadership. Truths that the powers that be do not want you to hear. Just in this last week, Bob Avakian has been on fire with new messages every day, exposing the lies and slander aimed at the students rising up, pointing to the strategic significance of what they have accomplished and what more is needed, bringing alive the principled spirit of debate and digging into the root causes of this genocide and what it will take to not only end it, but end the basis for any other crime like this to be committed anywhere against anyone. He begins social media post number 33, discussing lessons from the free speech movement and the movement against the Vietnam War. Movements that came, along with the Black and other liberation movements of the 1960s, to define a generation of students. Today, the struggle for the people of Palestine is defining this generation. There's so much to learn from digging into BA's social media. Listen and spread them, and comment below about what you understood and what your questions are from this excerpt that we just played. Before closing, we think it important to say a few words about one of the main ways that the repression against the students protesting to stop the genocide of Palestinians is justified. This is taking shape through the big lie that opposition to this genocide, or even opposition to the state of Israel itself, is the same as anti-Semitism, which is prejudiced against the Jewish people. This is a lie that Genocide Joe Biden trumpeted again this week on the Holocaust Memorial Museum's Day of Remembrance in Washington, D.C. He used the memory of the Holocaust, a crime of genocidal proportions which resulted in the murder of 6 million Jewish people, to justify and turn people's attention away from the genocide that is taking place right now, backed and funded by Biden himself, the genocide that Israel is waging against the Palestinian people. Biden claimed that there is, quote, a ferocious surge of anti-Semitism in the country, end quote, to bolster his attack on the situation on college campuses, where he said, quote, Jewish students are being blocked, harassed, attacked while walking to class, end quote. And he said outright that, quote, calling for the annihilation of Israel is anti-Semitism. This is bullshit. Biden uses the word annihilation to conjure up the wiping out of the Jewish people. The reality is that Israel is a racist apartheid state, and as Bob Avakian in his social media post number 6, where he says, what should be the goal, quote, is definitely not kill off all the Jews in Israel or drive them into the sea. The answer is the abolition of the state of Israel and in its place, the creation of a revolutionary state in which the government and laws do not promote any religion and do not favor one people over another, and instead there is equality between Jews and Palestinians. The State of Israel was imposed on the Middle East by imperialism and today serves as a military outpost for U.S. imperialism in this strategic region. And, as Bob Avakian pointed out, in response to the claim that criticizing and protesting against Israel and its actions makes Jewish people uncomfortable or feel threatened, and therefore this criticism and protest must be prohibited and suppressed, end quote, Bob Avakian says, first of all, there are many Jewish people, including Jewish organizations on campuses, who are playing an important role in opposing the genocide that Israel is carrying out against the Palestinian people. If opposition to Israel and its genocidal actions make some Jewish people uncomfortable, then they need to examine why it makes them uncomfortable. Every decent person who stands for justice should not just be uncomfortable, but outraged by what Israel is doing, end quote. Biden also argued that, quote, never again means never forget. No, never again really has to mean never again to anyone, not just never again to my people. All right, so that brings us to the end of this 195th episode of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. Subscribe to our channel, become a patron and support this show, and spread the show to everyone you know. This is a lifeline to the revolution, a lifeline to the future. We premiere the shows on Thursday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, and 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And I want to thank the crew for working on this show tonight, and to Sansara Taylor for continuing that work out in the world and in that interview she did with Raphael and Amina. Good night.